And now Carlsen goes for g6, and you can see he's preparing to fianchetto his bishop to g7, entering the accelerated dragon variation. And after that, Nodirbek strikes with d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, bishop to g7, knight to c3, knight to c6, putting pressure on the centralized d4 knight. So to defend this, bishop to e3, and after that Carlsen develops his another knight on f6, bishop to c4. He develops his bishop on c4, eyeing on this strong diagonal, but Carlsen goes for queen to a5, creating some pressure over the knight. And after that, both sides just castles, completing their development, and here Nodirbek brings his bishop to b3, avoiding any b5 push. And after that, okay, so now bishop to d7, and Magnus is developing his last minor piece and preparing to bring his rook to the center. And guys, in this position here, Nodirbek plays a special move f4, launching an attack on the king side as well as grabbing some space so that he can challenge the center. And after that, knight takes d4. Carlsen decides to exchange the knight, and after that he goes for bishop to c6, targeting the e4 pawn. So to defend this, queen to d3, and as you can see, he also develops his queen. Knight to d7, asking for bishop exchange. Bishop takes g7, king takes g7, rook at a goes to e1, and you can see he's preparing to push e5 so that he can blast open the center. And also this queen can anytime give a check from d4 square. And after that, here Magnus brings his rook into the open c file, creating a battery so that he can put some pressure. And after that, here Nodirbek brings his queen to g file so that he can ice the black king. But Carlsen goes according to his plan. He starts his queenside expansion with b5, threatening to push b4. But here Nodirbek strikes in the center with e5. His idea is to open the e file, taking the maximum control over the black's position. And here Carlsen continues by capturing the pawn on e5. And now for white, it's better to just recapture with the f pawn, threatening to push e6. So to stop this, if let's say black pushed e6, now comes rook to f4. And you can see here white can play rook to h4 in the future. As you can see, the white pieces are placed perfectly. I mean, just look at this bishop, which clearly shows that white is in a good position. But in the actual game, after this move, here Nodirbek gets passive and he plays f5, which is a mistake because so basically he gets passive and he just tries to lock the king side. But this gives Magnus the upper hand in the current position, and he instantly pushes a5, continuing the queenside attack as well as threatening to push this pawn to a4 so that he can trap the bishop. So to defend this, a3 might be the best move, but instead he pushes and after that, here Carlsen brings his queen to b4, targeting the knight on e4. So to defend this, he goes for rook to a1, and after that knight to f6 by Carlsen, and you can see what he is preparing next. But Nodirbek instantly grabs the e5 pawn, improving the position of his queen. But guys, in this position here, the best move for black is to bring this c rook on d8 with the idea of rook to d2 so that he can infiltrate into the white's position. But let's say if he tries to attack the queen with rook to f4. And guys, now I just want you all to pause the video and just try to find the best move for black in this position. And guys, here the best move for black is to bring this rook on d2, completely giving up this queen. And the idea is if rook takes b4, now comes rook takes g2 check. The only move is king to h1 and rook to e2 check. And in this position, you can see white has to lose his queen. And clearly you can see this is completely winning for black. But in the actual game, after queen takes e5, here Carlsen goes for queen to e4, asking for queen exchange, which basically neutralizes all of the black's advantage. But surprisingly, Nodirbek, declines it, and he brings his queen back to g3 because maybe he wants to keep his queen so that he can, eye the black king. But now Carlsen improves the position of his knight and he targets the queen. So queen goes to f2, and after that he gives a check from e5 square. And here the best move is to bring this king back to g1, but instead he makes a mistake with pushing g3, which defends the check but also weakens the king side. I mean, just look at this light square bishop, which is laser focused on h1. Okay, so now Magnus captured on f5. And now here note one thing, that it's clear that queen takes f5 is not possible due to this mate, which is queen takes g3. And because as you can see, this bishop is covering the h1 diagonal. So that's why after this move, here Nodirbek goes for knight to b6. But guys, now what I'm going to show you will definitely blow your mind. Because in this position, what's the best move for black? Here it is to play rook at f goes to d8. And the idea is after knight takes c8, now guys, I just want you all to pause the video again and just try to think the next move which black can play in this position. And guys, if you find the move rook to d2, then congrats, you are a genius. The idea is to deflect the queen from the defense of g3 pawn so that black can mate white on g3. That's amazing, really amazing. But in the game after knight to b6, here Carlsen does the exact same thing, but he chooses the wrong rook. And basically he so basically he's preparing to play the same move, but knight to c4. Nodirbek just covers the d2 square, as well as now he's attacking the queen. So that's why this queen has to move. So Carlsen brings it on c7, and after that rook takes a5. He just grabs the a5 pawn. And guys, here the best move for black is to push e6 so that he can defend the pawn on f5, but instead he goes for bishop to e4. And the problem with that move is now white can consider the move rook to a7, which attacks the queen. And after this queen moves to either c8 or b8, then just rook takes e7. But surprisingly, Nodirbek missed that variation, and he goes for rook to c5, attacking the queen. So Carlsen brings it on d7, and after that g4. He just attacks the knight as well as tries to capture this pawn. But knight to f6. And now here white can consider the move queen to e3 so that he can give a check from g5 square. But instead he captured on f5, and now king to h8 because white is going to give a check. And after that queen to f4. And guys, basically he just tries to attack the bishop, as well as he can infiltrate with the move queen to g5 and then rook to g1. But rook to g8, Magnus just takes control over the g file, threatening absolute destruction on g2. So to stop this, knight to e3. But guys, queen to d2 check, rook to f2. But now Carlsen plays queen to c1, threatening a deadly mate on h1. So to stop this, Nodirbek plays knight to g4 so that he can block this file. But what about queen to h1 check, because this bishop is still in the game? King to g3. And guys, in this position, the final move by Carlsen is knight to h5 check. And in this position, Nodirbek Abdusattorov resigned. This is because, let's suppose if this game continues, let's say if this king goes to h4, which is the only move, but knight takes f4, rook takes f4, queen to e1 check, rook to f2. And guys, now in this position, black can play this amazing move, which is rook takes g4. Just try to open the king, and after rook takes f2, rook to c7. Let's say But queen to f5 check, king to h4, and you can see soon white is going to get checkmated. Absolutely brilliant play by our GOAT Magnus Carlsen. Like this video and I will see you in the next one. This is your host Bison signing off. Bye bye.